Welcome to Nursing True Crime. So our story this week is a long one because this is like kind of crazy. And our story revolves around Neils Hoegel. He was convicted of killing more than 100 patients in 2 hospitals in Germany. So this guy was a nurse. He grew up in West Germany, Wilhelmshaven, Lower Saxony in West Germany to be exact. And apparently led this like super sheltered childhood, was never exposed to violence at home. He went to nursing school in 1997 and started at the St. Wilhad Hospital and became a nurse and continued working there for a while until 1999. In 1999, he went to the Oldenburg Clinic in its cardiac surgery intensive care unit. I feel like a lot of these people work in cardiac. I don't know why I feel like that's important, but emergency and cardiac seems to be a theme. So it was called Ward 211. So in August of 2001, they had this meeting, right? This big meeting, and it was like, hey, there's this unusual spike in deaths and resuscitations, and they found that Hoegel was in attendance during like 58% of these incidents. And like he called in sick for 3 weeks because he really thought that he had been found out at that time. He admitted that later. He said that he thought he had been found out, so he called in sick a lot. And it wasn't until much later that they found out that he was actually involved. So he was transferred by the head physician because the head physician's like, hey, look, this guy is like here all the time. And as soon as he was transferred, it fell like crazy. And also while he was off, only 2 patients in the ward died during that 3-week period. So I feel like they kind of knew what was going on, but they still didn't fire him. So they transferred him to anesthesiology in 2001. And the head physician there became suspicious as well because he was always involved in these emergency situations. So in 2002, Oldenburg's clinic head physician confronted him after multiple patients in his care had been found in like these crazy life-threatening conditions that they didn't have, right? Like he, basically said to Hoegel, you have to resign, or he was going to be transferred to the clinic's logistics unit where he would just assist moving patients around the hospital. So I feel like, if they would have transferred him to the transportation logistics section, which is basically our transporters, he would have found a way to kill people anyway. But the problem with this story is, so he was transferred, and on October 10th of 2002, right? This is after all this stuff happened and, the physicians were suspicious. He received a letter from the director of nursing in the hospital that testified, and I quote, to his circumspect, diligent and autonomous work ethic. She also praised him, said that he was devoted and that he was, he always was cooperative, and basically said that he was the best employee ever, right? They wrote this, maybe they just wanted to get rid of him. I don't know. But so this becomes a problem later. So after there, he went to a clinic called Delmhurst. And that was in December of 2002. Because remember, he got 3 months worth of pay for killing people. Which I can't even begin to say how wrong that is. But he went to this Delmenhurst clinic and he was involved in emergencies and fatalities there, right? They'd had sudden arrhythmias or they'd have sudden decreases in blood pressure. And it began happening more and more when he was on duty, and it led to his coworkers kind of being like, whoa, what's going on? This guy is constantly around people that are dying or need resuscitation. They probably called him a black cloud, but they probably had a feeling that something was going on. Later he reported that initially he was considered really held in high regard, but even then, after people started distancing themselves from him, right, they didn't act on it, right? This is a common theme, too, in these nurse crime stories. I feel like the administration does not act on their suspicions. So even they found like 4 empty vials of amylene, which I'm guessing is like heart medication, right? And it surfaced in his ward, and no doctors had ever prescribed it, and they still did nothing. So this goes on for 3 years, right? Like, so he initially, like, they thought that he was manipulating the patient's syringe pump. But they opened an investigation because they were a little suspicious. He was always involved with all these emergencies. This is another thing that had in common with that movie, The Nurse, right? She liked to be the person in charge and running the resuscitation. And apparently, like, he admitted fully that that's why he did it. So they did an extensive police investigation about this guy between like 2003 and 2005, and they determined that a number of deaths had doubled during Hoegel's employment there, and 73% of them could be connected to Hoegel's work schedule. So, like, that's crazy, right? So he got away with this for so long. So they went to jail. They arrested him finally in 2014, and he was charged with 3 counts of murder and 2 counts of attempted murder. But after they arrested him, he says, oh, hey, by the way, I killed 30 other people. And, like, they didn't even know. Like, I don't think they actually, like, knew that that was the number. But patient's deaths were caused by Hoegel's administering 90 unauthorized injections. 60 of those patients were successfully resuscitated. So they sentenced him to life imprisonment. I mean, I think he deserved death penalty. I don't know if they do that in Germany, but it became final in March of 2015. He stated, and his prosecutors stated, that he did it because he wanted to show off his resuscitation skills. They have suspicion that he killed even more people. 200 suspicious deaths were identified, and that, I mean, that's crazy, right? A total of 134 bodies in Germany, Poland, and Turkey were exhumed and autopsied during a 3-year investigation. That's crazy, right? They were in such bad decomposition at certain points that they were unable to detect any medication. So the 101 patients that died during Hoegel's tenure could not be autopsied, and their remains have been cremated. So, like, he probably killed hundreds, just like the good nurse, right? The 400 people that they think that guy killed. So, but the thing that's interesting about this particular, like, nurse, he received the maximum. So he is like, he's like admitting to these deaths. But he fully admitted throughout the investigation that he could not remember everybody that he killed. He did admit to using 5 particular drugs: amylene, Sadolol, lidocaine, amiodarone, and calcium chloride. And also they thought that he used potassium. I read that somewhere. Which, hello, that is like a horribly bad way to die. Potassium burns like a lot. So not only was he killing these people, he was like torturing them. So they did like appeal at some point, but the main trial at Langdor, I have problems with some of these nerds, but there was 120 joint plaintiffs this was like a huge thing. The 2019 court proceedings spanned a total of 24 days of trial, and out of the 100 murder charges, he confessed to 43 on the first day because he could not recall the other 52, and he denied his involvement in the 5 remaining deaths. So 32 witnesses presented at the trial, and 3 witnesses were heard on camera. 4 medical experts testified as to the medications, right? Because they wanted to prove that these were deadly medications. He did get the acquittal in 3 of the cases, but 97 convictions happened. He was then sentenced to life in prison. But the interesting thing about this particular case is that they tried the former supervisors in February of 2022, right? Just last year. They tried the supervisors because they didn't do anything. They had suspicions and they didn't protect their hospital. And one of the hospitals, the Delmenhurst Clinic, introduced like a new professional which involves an additional coroner to prevent unnatural causes of death owing to criminal actions going unnoticed. So literally, like, this is what I said every time I do one of these stories, right? Like, there's always somebody at the top who knew or had a suspicion and let it go. And in this case, like, they actually prosecuted, or they're trying to prosecute the supervisors, because the hospital's like, hey, we didn't even know about this. How are we responsible for the fact that our employees didn't report this? I mean, I kind of think that there should be some kind of stopgaps in place to prevent that from happening, but it does seem like a lot of administrators tend to know when this stuff is going on, or they have suspicions and it goes unreported to the police. Like, so that in that way, are they responsible? I kind of think they are, and they should be held accountable. Is that the hospital system's fault? I mean, is it their fault that they don't have systems in place to recognize this? Yes. I think that there needs to be both, right? Administrators have to report this kind of behavior, and the hospital systems have to have systems in place to catch things that are not reported. Both, because abuse of power does not exist in nursing and healthcare. I'm sure that it happens. You know, it's relatively easy, or at least it was. Nowadays, and it depends on where you work, right? But like in a hospital where I work, they inventory everything. So they can see if things are going on. You have double waste systems. So you can't just steal medications at will. Like, you have to take them out, and people know that you took them. And they know that you administered them. Do people get away with stuff like that? Absolutely, they get away with stuff. I'm sure of it. And they say that nurses represent a really high number of addictions and unhealthy behaviors. So I would not be shocked if things happen like that. I have never been suspicious of anybody doing that. But if I saw it, if I did feel like somebody was always present when an emergency happened, would I report it? If I knew for sure that there was a correlation, I would definitely report it. But, I mean, I work in an ER. Like, who knows? Like, you know, it's harder to tell in that kind of scenario. So, I don't know. But this was a crazy story. And he's going to be in jail for the rest of his life. But, you know, this was crazy. I'm sure they're going to make a movie out of it, because it is very long and involved. And I mean, this spanned 20 years almost. So I don't know. That's crazy. But anyway, that's our nursing true crime story of the day. Stay tuned for our nurse chat segment.